This is not a message you happen to hear by chance, and it is not a story to pass the time. This is the moment when truth begins to touch your life, because something has gone too far without you realizing it. From this very second, there is an invisible force pulling your gaze away from the calm surface on the outside, forcing you to feel again the deep vibrations you have tried to ignore for far too long. You did not come here out of curiosity. You came here because your soul can no longer endure the false silence. There are paths in life that do not drift because of one obvious wrong turn, but because of very small steps that are gradually adjusted. You keep walking, keep living, keep believing that everything is fine, until one day you realize you no longer recognize yourself. Not because you became weaker, but because something quietly stood too close, so close that it distorted your inner compass. And heaven saw this long ago, even before you began to ask questions. You have had very strange moments, not crises, not tragedies, just moments when your heart suddenly sank for no clear reason. A sentence that sounded completely normal but made your chest feel heavy. A conversation that ended, but the unease did not leave. You told yourself that you were thinking too much, that maybe you needed to learn to be more easygoing. But your soul was not born to be easygoing with things that make it shrink. Your soul was born to recognize truth, even when that truth has not yet been given a name. There was a hand that was there in moments you did not notice, not to push you down, but to hold you back. Doors that seemed about to open suddenly closed. Plans that felt certain were delayed at the last minute. You were annoyed, disappointed. You thought you were being blocked. But now, when you look back, one sentence echoes clearly in your inner space. Psalm 25:14 says, "The Lord reveals his covenant to those who fear him." Some things are not taken away to punish you, but to protect you from what you were not yet clear enough to see. You did not know that behind familiar smiles, behind closeness that seemed harmless, there were intentions not born from light. Darkness does not always appear as a threat. Sometimes it comes as a companion, a listener, someone who makes you feel understood, and because of that, it is allowed to stay for so long. You trusted with your pure heart, and you believed that trust would be honored. But not everyone who enters your life comes to walk with you. There were nights when you could not sleep, not for any specific reason. You just felt as if something was slipping out of control, but you could not name it. You prayed. You questioned yourself. You tried to fix yourself first, because you are the kind of person who always looks inward before doubting the outside. But that is exactly what makes you carry burdens that do not belong to you. And heaven observed everything, without judgment, without haste, simply waiting until your heart was strong enough not to break when the truth began to surface. You need to understand one thing very clearly from the beginning. This warning does not come because you are weak. It comes because you are standing very close to an important turning point. When destiny is about to shift, what does not belong to the next journey will begin to reveal itself. Not with loud noise, but with very subtle cracks in emotion, in intuition, in the peace that once felt so familiar to you. Those cracks are not signs of collapse. They are signals of awakening. There is a man in this story, and you once did not think you needed to be cautious. He did not appear as an opponent. He appeared as part of the picture, harmonious enough not to raise suspicion. But heaven does not look at the picture the way you do. It sees through the colors, through the composition, through the role being played. And when it looks into the flow of your life, it sees a dark spot standing too close to the source of light. You have felt yourself being slowed down without understanding why. Decisions that should have been clear became vague. Steps that should have felt natural became heavy. You thought it was because you were tired, because of circumstances, because the timing was not right. But the truth is that some delays do not come from within you, but from external influences that have taken root long enough to feel familiar. And that familiarity is the most dangerous disguise of all. Right now, as you are reading these lines, you may feel a slight tension in your chest, or a very vague sensation, as if someone is calling your name from a very deep place. That is not fear, that is recognition. Your soul is beginning to remember what it tried to tell you through feelings, through intuition, through moments when you chose silence to keep the peace. But peace is never built by trading away truth. This story has not yet reached a name. It has not reached exposure. It has only begun with you being allowed to pause long enough to listen. And the fact that you are still here, still reading these lines, says something very clearly. You are ready to look back at your own journey with a more honest gaze. Not to blame yourself, not to condemn, but to understand why everything unfolded the way it did. Heaven never pulls the curtain too early and never lets it fall too late. When truth begins to knock, that is when you are mature enough to no longer run from it. And from this moment on, the story will no longer revolve around what you missed, but around what you are about to be freed from. This journey is yours, and it has just truly begun. Truth does not arrive like thunder. It comes like a thin mist, just enough to blur your vision, but not enough to make you stop walking. And within that mist, that man stood very still, not too noticeable, not too distant. He stood at exactly the distance that made you feel safe, close enough to be trusted, familiar enough not to be questioned. You did not call it danger, you called it presence. You remember the first times the sense of unease appeared, not when he entered your life, but after that. After the conversations became more intimate, after you began to share more about your dreams, your fears, the things you keep very deep for those you believe are safe. Each time something inside you quietly closed, as if a door had been gently pushed, not enough to shut completely, but enough to create a small sound within your soul. You asked yourself whether you were being too strict. You learned to explain others before protecting your own feelings. You became used to placing kindness before clarity. And right there, confusion began to take root. Because not every silence is peace, and not every smile carries sincerity. There are silences that are nurtured by calculation, and there are smiles practiced long enough to look real. There were very small moments, and if you look back, you will see them lining up into a straight line, a promise that sounded reasonable but never took shape. Advice offered right when you were about to step forward, causing you to hesitate. A casual remark that made you doubt your own intuition. No single action was big enough for you to stand up and say something was wrong, but there were too many small signs for you to keep saying that everything was fine. You did not realize that while you were trying to keep the peace, another game was being played. Not a game of actions, but a game of intentions. Thoughts kept hidden, conversations happening when you were not present, conclusions made about you that you were never allowed to hear directly. And the most painful part was not the betrayal, but the fact that it was wrapped in the appearance of care. Your soul sensed this very early. It spoke not through words, but through feelings, through the heaviness after each meeting, through the quiet withdrawal of joy, through the feeling that someone was standing between you and the light. Even though you could not see a clear shape. You ignored those signals many times, not because you were blind, but because you believed that love meant giving more chances. But there is one truth that cannot be denied. What does not belong to the light will always feel heavy when near it. And you, even if you never named yourself that way, have always carried a very clear light within you. That is what made you a place others wanted to lean on, wanted to stand close to, even wanted to take advantage of. Not everyone wants to extinguish your light, but some people do not want you to shine brighter than they do. There is an ancient line that once spoke of this, a line you may never have read, but your soul has long understood. They shoot arrows from hiding at the innocent, shooting suddenly without fear. They plot to set traps in secret. Those words do not speak of a loud battle. They speak of schemes unfolding in silence, where the target does not know they are being aimed at. And what matters is this: those arrows are often shot from very close. You have wondered why good things in your life keep shifting without moving forward, why doors that seemed ready remain half closed, why you always feel you must try harder than necessary just to keep things standing still. You blame timing, circumstances, yourself, but some delays do not come from lack of ability or lack of faith. They come from a shadow standing too close to the source of your blessings. That does not mean that man appeared to destroy you immediately. Not all destruction looks brutal. Some destruction happens very slowly, by keeping you staying longer than you should, by making you doubt the very things that once made you strong. And while you were trying to fix yourself to preserve that relationship, a part of you was quietly running dry. Heaven saw this, not only the actions, but the intentions, not only what was spoken, but the thoughts that never became words. And his patience was not permission, it was preparation, because some truths, if revealed too early, would break you. But when they are revealed at the right time, they will set you free. Right now, you may be starting to connect memories you once left scattered, times when you wondered why, after talking with him, you needed more time to return to yourself. Times when you felt you had to explain too much, prove too much, yield too much. Not because you lacked value, but because someone had grown used to standing on your value without being questioned. This story has not named that person. It does not need to yet, because before truth is spoken in words, it must be recognized through feeling. And you are very close to that moment. The moment when you no longer ask, "Am I wrong?" but begin to ask, "Why did I stay silent for so long?" Not to blame yourself, but to understand that silence was once how you survived, but it is no longer how you are meant to live. You were not led here to grow more doubt. You were led here to prepare for clarity. Something is about to be placed back where it belongs, not through anger, not through revenge, but through light. And light, when it comes, does not need to raise its voice. It only needs to be there, and darkness will retreat on its own. There is a very thin moment between doubting yourself and beginning to trust yourself again, and you are standing right on that line. You have not been able to name anything specific yet, but you know very clearly that this feeling is not new. It has been with you for a while, quietly, persistently, like a soft knock on an inner door that you have kept postponing opening. Not because you could not hear it, but because you were afraid that once you opened it, nothing would remain the same. You became used to adjusting yourself in order to adapt, used to swallowing questions before they were spoken, used to keeping a relationship stable by making your own emotions smaller. And each time you told yourself that this was maturity, compassion, unconditional love. But there is a very straightforward truth your soul has known for a long time. Maturity never asks you to betray your own intuition. There were conversations that seemed completely normal, yet afterward you needed a long time alone to regain your energy. There were moments when you stepped out of a space with that man and felt as though you had just lost a very thin layer of peace. No one saw it, no one questioned it, and you did not say it out loud, because saying it would mean facing the possibility that your feeling was right, and if it was right, then you would have to change. You once believed that if you tried a little more, endured a little longer, everything would settle on its own. But the truth is that what is unhealthy at its core will not become healthy simply because you stay silent. Silence only gives it more room to take root. And that man, whether intentionally or not, grew accustomed to you always being the one who stepped back first. Not because you were weak, but because you had a very high capacity to endure. Perhaps right now, as these lines move through you, a memory is beginning to surface, a very specific moment you once brushed aside. A look, a comment that seemed harmless, a slight chill running down your spine that you laughed off and ignored. If that is happening, let it stay. Do not rush to push it away. Not every realization needs an immediate reaction. Some realizations only need to be acknowledged. If you feel these words touching the deepest place within you, leave behind a very small sign, not to tell anyone else, but to tell yourself that you are listening. Some spiritual journeys begin not with loud prayers, but with a very simple act admitting that you no longer want to ignore this feeling. And if you want to continue moving with this current, stay here, just as you are doing now, not out of habit, but out of resonance. You are beginning to see something very subtle. The unease does not appear when you are alone, but when you are near a specific person, it is not always obvious. Sometimes it is just the feeling that you must be cautious. Choose your words carefully. Weigh your reactions more than usual. You became so used to living in that state that you assumed it was normal, but it is not. True peace does not require you to tense yourself in order to maintain it. There is a very big difference between connection and attachment. Connection allows you to expand. Attachment makes you shrink. And if you are honest with yourself, you will see that since that man stepped more deeply into your life, there are parts of you that no longer feel comfortable opening as before. You share less, not because you are private, but because you no longer feel as safe as you once believed. Safety does not disappear suddenly. It withdraws little by little, slowly enough to make you doubt yourself. You did not realize that you had begun adjusting your dreams to fit the presence of someone else. Plans that once excited you suddenly felt indulgent. Desires that were once very clear were suddenly questioned. No one directly stopped you from moving forward, but there are presences that cause you to hold back automatically. And that is more dangerous than any direct opposition, because it makes you believe the decision was entirely your own. Heaven does not rush to intervene while you are still learning how to listen. Some lessons cannot be taught through words, only felt through experience. But every experience has its limit. When silence begins to hurt you more than speaking out, that is when intervention becomes necessary, not to frighten you, but to stop you from continuing to adapt to a state that does not belong to you. You may feel a slight tension in your chest as you read this, not because you are being accused, but because something is being named very slowly. No one is standing in front of you telling this story. There is no outside voice commanding or guiding you. Your own soul is connecting the points. And when it begins to do that, nothing can stop the clarity that is drawing near. Notice what is happening inside you right now. Not the thoughts, but the feeling. It may be a very gentle relief, as if you have just been allowed to exhale after holding your breath for a long time. It may also be a vague sadness, because you are realizing that you have been in this situation longer than you thought. Both are natural responses. No response is wrong when truth begins to rise to the surface. You do not need to make any decisions right now. This story is not asking you to act yet. It is only asking you to awaken. There is a very big difference between knowing and being ready. And right now, you are moving from knowing to being ready. One very slow but very real step at a time. No one is pushing you. No one is pulling you. You are walking on your own. The fact that you are still here, still reading, still listening, is already a very clear sign. Not everyone is brave enough to sit with feelings that are hard to name. Many people choose distraction, choose to ignore, choose to return to what is familiar even when it drains them. But you did not. You chose to pause. And this pause is not stagnation. It is the foundation of movement in the right direction. The story is still open. What has been spoken so far is only the surface of something much deeper. There are more layers that will be peeled back, not in a rush, not with force, but with clarity. And when they begin to reveal themselves, you will understand why everything unfolded this way, not to make you doubt life, but to help you trust the voice within you again. You are not lost. You are simply being guided out of an influence you grew so accustomed to that you no longer recognized it. And this journey, even if it unsettles you for a moment, will bring you back to the place you once belonged. Not a new version of you, but you, before you learn to stay silent with the truth. There is a very specific moment when the soul begins to look back at what it at once only sensed through intuition. It is no longer vague. Old memories do not surface to accuse, but like puzzle pieces finding their rightful place. You begin to remember every small detail you once considered insignificant, not because they were big, but because they repeated, and what repeats long enough becomes a message. That man never stood in front of you as an opponent. He did not need to. He chose to stand beside you as part of the rhythm of everyday life. That very normality lowered your guard. You believed that if something were wrong, you would notice immediately. But some things do not trigger alarms. They quietly tilt your inner balance, little by little, slowly enough that you do not realize where you are being pulled. You begin to see a pattern clearly. Each time you prepared to step forward, something caused you to hesitate, not commands, not prohibitions, but advice that sounded very reasonable. Questions asked at the exact moment you felt motivated. Remarks that made you wonder whether you were moving too fast, too far, too dreamily. And you listened, not because you lacked determination, but because you believed that someone who cared about you would not want you to lose your way. But there is a truth you are beginning to understand. Not everyone close to you wants you to go far. Some people feel safest when you remain still, not because they are openly cruel, but because your growth quietly exposes the limits within them. And instead of facing that, they choose to keep you in familiar territory, where they can still feel in control. You found yourself having to explain so much. Explaining your dreams, explaining your choices, explaining even the very real emotions you experienced. Each time you stepped back a little to keep the atmosphere calm, but that calm always came at a cost. And the cost was that you slowly stopped saying everything you thought, stopped fully living what you knew was true. There is a line in the Bible that speaks very plainly. People look at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. These words are not meant to make you distrust everything, but to remind you that not everything that looks right is born from integrity. You saw politeness, intelligence, subtlety, but some things can only be recognized when you observe how you feel after each interaction. Whether peace remains, whether clarity increases, or whether it is just a familiar tiredness you have learned to accept. You begin to realize that some conversations make you stronger, and some conversations make you smaller. No one says outright that you are not enough, but some looks make you wonder whether you are asking for too much. No one tells you to stop, but some reactions cause you to lower your expectations automatically. And the most dangerous part is when you begin to believe it was your own choice, while it was shaped by an unhealthy presence. Heaven does not overlook these details. Not a single moment when you doubted yourself went unseen. Not a single time you chose silence to keep the peace went unnoticed. His patience is not indifference, it is deep and careful observation, so that when the time comes, the truth is not only revealed, but placed exactly where it belongs within your heart. You may begin to feel a very small shift in how you see that man. Not anger, not hatred, just a step back. A distance just wide enough for you to breathe, just wide enough for you to realize that some things you once accepted were not because they were right, but because you did not want to disappoint someone. But the truth is, every time you disappoint yourself to keep someone else close, you pay a very high price that no one tells you about. The more you look back, the clearer it becomes that what you called harmony was actually one-sided adjustment. You were the one who understood, who yielded, who waited. You were the one who always found ways to keep things flowing, even when it exhausted you. And that man grew accustomed to that role of yours, not because he deliberately created it, but because he was never required to change. Something is slowly forming within you now. Not a decision to cut ties, not a dramatic action, just awareness. The awareness to see that not all closeness is connection, and not all familiarity is safety. The awareness to understand that if a relationship constantly makes you doubt your intuition, then the problem is not your intuition. You do not need to rush. Truth does not ask you to run. It only asks you not to turn away anymore. And you are doing exactly that. You are staying with this feeling, not pushing it away, not decorating it. You are allowing yourself to look directly at what has happened, without judgment, only to understand. And this understanding is the foundation of the freedom that is coming. The story is moving deeper, and what will be revealed is not meant to wound you. It is meant to restore the inner order within you, where you no longer have to ask permission to trust what you feel. There are more layers that will continue to open, not loudly, not dramatically, but very clearly. And when they do, you will no longer see everything through the old lens. There is a very quiet moment when you begin to realize that the fatigue you carry does not come from the outside world, but from constantly adjusting yourself to fit a presence that is no longer aligned. You do not say it out loud right away. You simply feel your breathing grow heavier after each time you are near that man, as if an invisible pressure forces you to stay alert, to stay proper, to always be ready to explain yourself. No one asks this of you in words, but your body has learned how to respond. You begin to see clearly that peace does not leave you when you are alone. It only withdraws when you are near a specific source of energy. And that makes you pause, not to conclude, but to observe. For the first time, you stop trying to justify your feelings. You simply acknowledge them in silence. And in that silence, something very deep begins to move. You realize that what was once called challenges may, in fact, have been protection. The plans that were delayed, the relationships that did not progress the way you expected, the doors that seemed about to open but closed at the last moment. Before, you called it bad luck, delay, poor timing. But now, looking back, a very different logic appears. There were steps that, if allowed to happen sooner, would have placed you in a far more vulnerable position. In that very still space, a familiar line rises, not as sound, but as certainty. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you does not sleep. Psalm 121 says this not to lull you into rest, but to remind you that true protection often happens quietly. You did not realize how many times you were held back from things that seemed good, but would have led you onto a path misaligned with your true nature. You begin to see clearly that the man did not need to do anything overtly wrong to have an effect. His presence alone, long enough, close enough, familiar enough, was enough to alter your natural rhythm. Decisions that once came easily now require more deliberation. Joys that were once simple now seem to need unspoken permission. And you adapted to this so thoroughly that you no longer noticed you were living as a smaller version of yourself. What made you pause was not a single action, but a recurring feeling, the feeling of being observed without being understood. You shared, but were not fully received. You spoke, but your words seemed to be held at the surface. There is a vast difference between being heard and being understood. And deep within, you knew you were no longer being understood in the way you needed. You did not become angry because of this. You simply began to withdraw a part of yourself. very gently, sharing less, dreaming less, revealing less. Not because you wanted to hide, but because you were protecting yourself without realizing it. And within that withdrawal, heaven began to open a different perspective for you. Not to push you out of a relationship, but to draw you back to yourself. A truth slowly becomes clear. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to walk with you to the end. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a while, and if they try to stay beyond their appointed place, they begin to create interference, not necessarily out of ill intent, but because of misalignment. When two souls are no longer in the same rhythm, closeness becomes a burden instead of support. You begin to understand that protection does not always look like a wall. Sometimes it is a delay. Sometimes it is an unease you cannot explain. Sometimes it is the fact that someone cannot move deeper into your life, no matter how much they try. And all of this is coming together into a new picture, one where you no longer see yourself as someone who failed because things did not go as planned. Instead, you begin to see yourself as someone who was protected, not because you are fragile, but because what you carry is too important to be placed in the wrong setting. There are journeys that cannot continue while still carrying old influences. And heaven, in its long patience, waited until you were clear enough to recognize this without breaking. Right now, you may feel a very subtle shift in your chest. Not a great joy, but the lightening of a burden you carried without naming. You are no longer trying to understand that man. Instead, you are beginning to understand yourself. And this understanding does not weaken you. It makes you stand taller, even before you take a single step. The story is still moving forward. What is opening is not meant to force you into immediate action, but to free you from confusion. Some things will soon become very clear, not through events, but through an inner reordering. And when that is complete, you will no longer have to ask yourself why you once felt the way you did. There are moments that are not loud but carry great weight, and you are stepping into such a moment now. Everything around you may still appear normal, but inside, nothing is the same anymore. You are no longer only sensing through intuition. You are beginning to understand with a very quiet certainty. The pieces that have long been scattered are starting to find one another without force, without interpretation. They fit together on their own, as if they have been waiting for this exact moment to reveal themselves. You are beginning to see clearly that what once confused you was not random. The times you hesitated just as you were about to move forward. The moments you changed direction without knowing why. The pauses that once seemed meaningless but appeared at critical points. Before, you called it delay, but now, looking back, you recognize it as protection. There was a hand placed between you and choices that would have cost you dearly, even though at the time you were not clear enough to see it. Within this flow, a sign appears very clearly, not as an image, but as repetition in feeling. The number 444. It does not come to spark curiosity, but to confirm. In the language of the soul, 444 is a sign of a solid foundation and divine protection. It appears when someone is being guarded during a transition, when what does not belong to the next journey is being removed from the old foundation. You may not be someone who usually pays attention to numbers, but if 444 has appeared to you in moments of hesitation, in moments of prayer, in days when you did not understand why you had to wait, then it was not coincidence. It was a very gentle reminder that you are not standing alone in difficult decisions. There is a structure being built around you, even when you feel as though you are standing still. You begin to realize that true protection does not make you feel indulged. It makes you feel held back at the right moment. It does not soothe every emotion, but it prevents you from stepping into spaces where you would have to pay with yourself. That man no matter how close he was, could not cross a boundary you could not see but heaven had already placed. There were things he could not reach, even while standing very near. This truth does not make you proud. It makes you more humble, because you begin to understand that you were protected even in moments when you were not clear enough to protect yourself. There were conversations that did not go further. There were plans that never fully formed. There were doors that closed very quickly, not because you were unworthy, but because if they had opened, you would have carried influences that did not belong to where you were about to go. You no longer see delay as personal failure. You see it as a buffer, a space created so you would not collide directly with what was not ready. And within that space, you were allowed to look back without pressure to act. You were allowed to feel without having to explain. You were allowed to trust that if something did not move forward, it may not have been because you lacked something, but because you were being held. That man is still there in the story, but his position is changing, not because he disappears, but because you are no longer viewing him from the same angle. You begin to see him as part of a phase, not part of the destination, and this shift happens very quietly. No arguments, no confrontation. You simply no longer allow his presence to define your sense of safety. You realize that your inner foundation is being reinforced, not through blind belief, but through clarity. You do not need more evidence from the outside. You only need to notice how your body responds when you imagine moving forward with him, and when you imagine moving on without carrying that influence. One makes you shrink. The other allows you to breathe more deeply. The difference is too clear to keep ignoring. Right now, you may feel a very gentle urge to share, not to explain, not to vent, but simply to say that you are recognizing something very real. If the number 444 or any number has repeated itself along your journey, leave it there, not to prove anything, but to confirm to yourself that you saw the sign and you did not turn away. Small acknowledgments like this carry great power in the unseen realm. You do not need to rush to separate yourself from anyone. The foundation being built does not require you to destroy everything around you. It only asks that you stand in your rightful place. When you stand correctly, what does not align will naturally slide out of influence. No struggle, no persuasion. Misalignment reveals itself when you stop adjusting yourself to compensate for it. You begin to understand that protection is not about preventing all pain. It is about preventing pain from becoming destiny. There will still be moments of impact. There will still be sadness you pass through, but they will not define you. They will not derail you, because the foundation has been reset, deeper, stronger, aligned with who you truly are. The number 444 does not promise a smooth road. It promises that even if the road is uneven, you will remain standing. It is confirmation that you are being held within a structure greater than what you can see. And as you move forward, you are not stepping on unstable ground. You are stepping on a foundation reinforced by truth. The story is moving closer to the point where recognition becomes irreversible, not because you are forced to see, but because you no longer want to return to the old confusion. What has been placed within you during this phase will not disappear. It will walk with you, quietly, steadily, protecting every step you are about to take. There is a very clear point from which you cannot return to the old way of seeing, not because someone stood up to tell you the truth, but because the truth has stood up inside you. It does not need no new evidence. It is formed from the repetition of feelings you once tried to ignore. And when those feelings line up into a straight line, you no longer call them coincidence, you call them a message. You begin to look at that man with a different gaze. Not a gaze of harsh suspicion, and not a gaze of resentment, just a new clarity, where you no longer open your heart automatically because of familiarity. You observe how he shows up in your space, how he responds when you speak about the things that make you feel alive. There are very small moments, but they say a great deal. Silences that last longer than necessary. Topic changes right when you touch something important. Answers that sound reasonable but do not uplift. You realize that some people do not need to lie to lead you astray. They only need to not tell the whole truth. And that incompleteness, when repeated long enough, makes you doubt yourself. You once wondered why, after conversations with him, you needed time to return to your inner certainty. You thought that was the cost of closeness. But now you understand that true closeness never pulls you away from yourself. There is something painful yet freeing when you admit this. That man is not facing the same direction as you, not because he is entirely bad, but because his intentions do not move in rhythm with the light you carry. You once believed that with enough patience, enough love, enough explanation, everything would balance out. But balance cannot be built on one-sided sacrifice. And love never asks you to shrink your soul to fit someone else's comfort. You begin to remember the times he was close during important moments in your life, not when you were unraveling, but when you were about to break through, moments when you were preparing to step into a new space, a new way of thinking, a new choice. And it was precisely then that a very subtle force slowed you down, not through opposition, but through doubt planted quietly in your mind. You called it caution, but now you see it more like an invisible brake. Some things cannot be revealed while you still need validation from the one concealing them. And this is when you realize you no longer need that. You do not need his agreement to know what is right. You do not need his understanding to move forward. That permission was never in his hands. It was always within you. You had just forgotten it for a long time. When the truth begins to stand firmly within you, a strange sadness appears. Not sadness from loss, but from realizing you tried to hold on to something that could not go any further. You grieve for the version of yourself who compressed emotions, who waited for a change that never came. But this sadness does not drown you. It passes through you, like a brief rain, leaving the air clearer. There is a line written long ago, as if meant for this moment. Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed. Nothing concealed that will not be known. These words are not meant to threaten, but to reassure, because you are not the one who must tear off masks. You are not the one who must investigate or accuse. Truth has its own momentum. When the time comes, it steps into the light on its own. You begin to see clear signs that the influence of that man is weakening, not because he has changed, but because you no longer allow his presence to define your emotions. Words that once made you hesitate now pass without clinging. Looks that once carried weight no longer do. You do not need to be hard. You simply stop adjusting yourself to fit. There is a real relief in no longer having to explain your intuition to yourself. You no longer ask if you are being too sensitive. You understand that your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a tool. It is how you read what is left unsaid. And in a world where many things are wrapped in beautiful language, that tool kept you from drifting too far. You do not rush to cut ties. You also do not rush to confront. The change is happening in a different way. You withdraw your energy. You stop investing emotion in conversations that do not nourish you. You stop explaining your dreams to someone who does not truly want to see them realized. And when you do this, you see something very clearly. Some connections exist only because you keep giving. When you stop, they dissolve on their own. There may be a moment when you wonder if you are becoming cold, but no, you are not cold. You are becoming clear. And clarity always feels unfamiliar when you are used to confusion. You are not closing your heart. You are simply locking the doors that are no longer safe. That does not make you less loving. It makes you more honest with yourself. You begin to feel a very subtle shift in your inner space. Your thoughts no longer revolve around holding on or letting go. They revolve around standing firm. You stop asking what you should do to make everything better. You begin asking what brings you peace. And that question changes the way you see relationships, not only with that man, but with everything you allow into your life. The story is moving very close to the point where truth is no longer something you analyze, but something you live with, not through conflict, but through reordering, not through loud declarations, but through very quiet choices. And when you stand in that quiet, you will realize that you have not lost anything precious. You are simply returning light to the place where it has always belonged. There is a very clear shift when you no longer need to name anything, and yet you understand exactly what is happening. Truth is no longer a question. It becomes a state. You wake up with the feeling that you are no longer pulled toward conversations that make your heart feel heavy. You no longer feel the need to explain why you are quieter, because this silence is not avoidance, it is selection. You are learning to let your inner space breathe. That man still exists in the story, but he no longer holds the center. He gradually becomes part of an old background, not because you erased him, but because you moved out of the orbit where he once had influence. You no longer react. You no longer try to understand. You simply observe, and within that observation, everything reveals itself more clearly than any confession ever could. You begin to realize that truth does not need confrontation to be acknowledged. It only needs you to stand still in your own clarity. When some people are no longer nourished by your energy, the emptiness in their intention reveals itself, not through dramatic actions, but through absence. Words that once flowed smoothly no longer reach you. Presences that once distracted you now fade, not because you became numb, but because you no longer resonate. You feel one thing very clearly. When you stop trying to hold a connection together, the connection reveals its true nature. If it was built on sincerity, it will stand. If it was built on subtle manipulation, it will crack when you no longer adjust yourself to patch what was missing. And that man, in this new quiet, can no longer maintain the image you once trusted. There is no confrontation, no accusation is spoken, yet you clearly see how he responds when you no longer engage as before. There is a slight imbalance in how he holds his familiar role. You do not need to analyze it. You only need to notice it. And this noticing brings you a strange and steady feeling. The feeling of standing in the right place for the first time in a long while. There is a line written long ago that now arrives at exactly the right moment. There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. These words do not push you to say anything. They confirm that the silence you are choosing is not escape. It is wisdom. It is the sign that you have heard enough, seen enough, and no longer need to prove what you know. You realize that you do not need answers from him to move forward. Closure does not always come from a final conversation. Sometimes it comes from no longer asking questions. You stop asking why things were not what you imagined. You stop trying to resolve contradictions. You allow them to remain where they are, and that alone gives you freedom. In this new space, you begin to feel your true rhythm return. Your thoughts become clearer. Your decisions are no longer stretched by false hesitation. You no longer feel the need to ask anyone for permission to feel at peace. Peace begins to appear naturally, not as a reward, but as a state that arises when you are no longer in the wrong place. There may be moments when you feel empty, not because you lack something, but because you were used to an influence occupying your inner world. When that influence withdraws, the remaining space needs time to be filled with what is right, and you do not rush. You allow the emptiness to exist, because you understand that not every empty space needs to be filled immediately. Some spaces are created so light can enter. You no longer seek signs from the outside to confirm what you are living. Your body has answered clearly enough. Your mind has settled. Your soul is no longer tensed in warning. These are guides more trustworthy than any promise. And within this quiet agreement, you begin to walk more lightly, even if not yet faster. That man, somewhere in the story, is no longer the center of attention. He becomes evidence of a chapter you have moved beyond, not through loud victory, but through quiet maturity. You do not hate, you do not deny. You simply no longer carry it with you. And that is the true ending of an influence. The story is moving toward a place where clarity no longer needs to defend itself. It stands on its own. What remains in you now is not a question, but direction. You do not yet need to know where everything will lead. You only need to know that you are not returning to a place that made you smaller. And that certainty, though very quiet, is guiding you into an entirely different space. There is one thing that becomes very clear as you enter this stage: you are no longer seeking validation, not because you have become closed off, but because you have learned how to stand firmly without needing anyone to support the truth inside you. What once caused you to waver no longer has the strength to pull you off your center, not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the way you stand within it. You begin to realize that awakening is not only about seeing what is wrong, but also about learning not to repeat old patterns. In the past, you often ignored the first sign. You told yourself you needed more evidence, more time, more chances. But now you understand that the soul always speaks early. It whispers before the mind begins to argue. It sends signals before emotions rush to label them. And when you learn to listen to that first signal, you save yourself from a great deal of unnecessary pain. You no longer judge people by what they promise. You look at what they leave within you after each interaction. Does peace remain or not? Does clarity increase or not? Or do you need time to gather yourself again? You no longer feel guilty for stepping back from connections that drain you. You understand that protecting your inner space is not selfish. It is responsibility. There is a line written long ago, and now it is no longer an abstract teaching, but a lived experience for you. Look at their fruits, not their words. Not everyone needs to lie to cause harm. Some people only need to keep speaking without living in alignment with what they say. And you have learned that consistency is the language of truth. Wherever words and actions do not meet, you no longer stand in the middle trying to bridge the gap. You also begin to understand that your compassion is a gift, but it is not given without boundaries. There are people who will drink deeply from your kindness if you do not set limits. And you no longer call boundaries walls. You call them gates. They do not keep the right people out. They only prevent the wrong ones from staying too long. You do not need to explain why you need them. The right people will never ask you to remove them. You recognize that there are conversations that make you doubt yourself, and there are conversations that remind you who you are. You no longer try to fix the first kind. You choose the second, and that choice, though very quiet, has begun to change the entire rhythm of your life. You no longer wake up feeling the need to prepare yourself to face someone. You wake up with the sense that you are in the right place. There are mornings when you begin the day in silence, not because you lack motivation, but because you have learned the value of alignment. You do not need many words. You only need a moment to listen to the direction within you. And in that listening, you feel very clearly that you are being guided, not by fear, but by a deeper understanding of yourself. Another line rises, not as a reminder, but as confirmation. Show me the path I should walk, for my soul turns toward you. These words do not ask you to know every step ahead. They only ask you to take the next step with honesty. And you are doing exactly that. You no longer force yourself to see the entire future. You only need to see the present clearly, and that is enough. You also learn how to let what is taken away be taken away. In the past, you held on to what was familiar, even when it no longer nourished you. Now, when a door closes, you no longer run after it to keep it open. You understand that some losses are not punishment, but release. And each time you do not cling to what is leaving, you feel lighter, not empty. This wisdom does not make you distrust the world. It makes you steady within the world. You do not become cold. You become clear. You do not close yourself off from people. You simply open the door to those who respect the space you have learned to protect. And this change does not need to be announced. It reveals itself through the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you choose to stay or to leave. There may be moments when you wonder why you did not learn these lessons sooner, but that question no longer weighs on you. You understand that if you had known earlier, you might not have been strong enough to hold them. Every lesson arrives in its right time, and this one could only take root after you had walked through enough silence, enough doubt, enough friction to stop dismissing the voice within you. You no longer seek perfection in relationships. You seek truth, and truth, even when it is not comfortable, always carries relief. It does not ask you to perform. It does not require you to shrink or exaggerate. It allows you to exist exactly as you are, and that is the only foundation you are willing to continue building upon. The story is moving very close to its closing point, not because everything is finished, but because you have been equipped enough to move forward without turning back. What is about to be revealed is no longer meant to warn you. It is meant to confirm you. To confirm that you listened correctly, you felt correctly, and you chose correctly when you stopped betraying yourself one more time. There is a very different kind of silence when you reach this part of the journey. Not the silence of waiting or hesitation, but the silence of someone who has understood enough to no longer need more evidence. You are no longer standing at a crossroads in confusion. You are standing on solid ground, where every inner sense has come into agreement. No more pulling apart, no more debate, only a very quiet clarity that cannot be shaken. You realize that what hurt you most was not that man, but the time you spent trying to convince yourself that everything was fine when it clearly was not. Yet this realization does not bring self-blame, it brings release, because you understand that you did everything you could with the awareness you had at the time, and now, with new awareness, you no longer have to relive that lesson again. The name of that man, whether spoken or not, no longer holds power within you. It is no longer a question needing an answer. It becomes a symbol of a chapter that has closed. A symbol of what once stood very close to the light, but did not belong to the light. And you do not need to defeat him to move forward. You only need to stop carrying his influence. That is enough. There is a very clear moment when you notice that you are breathing differently, lighter, deeper, as if your chest has finally opened after a long time of tightening without your awareness. You no longer feel the need to defend yourself. You also no longer feel the need to prove anything. Peace appears not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer in the wrong place. And when you are no longer in the wrong place, what is right begins to find you naturally. You begin to look back on the entire journey with new eyes. The delays are no longer failures. They were moments when you were held back. The confusion is no longer a sign of weakness. It was a phase where your soul was learning to speak its own voice. Even the sadness is no longer meaningless. It taught you what did not belong to you, so you could recognize what truly does. An ancient line rises now, not as a distant promise, but as a complete confirmation. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. These words do not come to remind you of pain, but to remind you that you were never alone in it. Even when you did not understand what was happening, there was a protection that never left. You do not leave this story with bitterness. You leave with clarity. You do not carry resentment. You carry boundaries. And these boundaries do not close you off. They make you safe. They allow you to love without losing yourself. They allow you to open your heart without paying with your peace. This is a very different kind of maturity. Quiet, unshowy, but deep. There may be times when you look back and wonder why you did not leave sooner, but that question no longer troubles you. Because you understand that if you had left earlier, you might not have carried this lesson with you. And without this lesson, you could have repeated the same pattern with a different face, a different circumstance. Now that cycle has been broken, not through conflict, but through awareness. You begin to feel very clearly that what is coming next will not resemble what has passed. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed your position within it. You no longer attract connections that require you to sacrifice inner truth. You begin to resonate with what comes from clarity, respect, and genuine presence. This is not luck. It is the natural result of standing in the right place. You are no longer afraid of truth because you have seen what it does for you. It does not destroy you. It restores your sight. It does not take away what is precious. It removes what only pretended to be precious, so there is space for what is real to enter. From this moment on, you no longer ask for clarity. You live within it. Every small choice you make from here is illuminated by this experience. This journey does not end with a loud climax. It ends with steadiness. You stand here, no longer confused, no longer distracted, no longer doubting yourself to the point of betrayal. You know who you are when you are at peace, and you know what you will no longer accept that pulls you away from that state. This does not make you rigid, it makes you honest. You do not need to look back with regret. You also do not need to wear the identity of someone who was wounded. You are someone who has been freed. And this freedom is not a passing emotion. It is a new foundation, where you walk with the quiet confidence of someone who has seen darkness closely enough to no longer be deceived by it. The road ahead does not promise to be easy, but it promises to be real. And you have learned that a real path, even when uneven, is always lighter than pretending to walk on a path that was never yours. You no longer need warnings. You have become someone who listens to signs very early. This story closes here, not because your journey ends, but because you are strong enough to continue without further reminders. What needed to be revealed has been revealed. What needed to be released has been released. And what needs to be kept, you are holding firmly. You are not walking alone, you never were. And from this moment forward, every step you take carries a clarity that no one can take away.
Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.